Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Titans University. And today we would be talking about something which is kind of interesting, which is not only limited to the campaign building functionality that we have been looking at, but kind of extends the functionality of what Google Ads can do, and in fact, what you can do when it comes to Google Ads. All of us have specific goals that we would want to achieve for our businesses, but along the way, we also need to understand that it is very important for us to track our efforts. I've spent $1,000 when I'm advertising. I've got about, let's say, $5,000 in sales, which is a very good thing because I've made a profit of $4,000. But you also need to understand that where is this $4,000 coming from? Now, when you talk about these, it is not only restricted to Google Ads, but it's not just restricted to Google Ads, but the capability gets extended to whatever is it that you're advertising upon. Maybe you're advertising on LinkedIn, maybe you're advertising on Instagram, maybe you're using email, maybe you're using social media, maybe you're using YouTube. So basically, what we're going to talk about now defines where traffic is coming from. When it comes to Google Ads, you can also track things like what keyword is triggering the ad, what ad is doing better, what ad got you the conversion. While basic metrics can be derived from your Google Ads account itself, but when you talk about how a specific conversion came through which specific ad, or where did a particular conversion come from, what campaign it got from, what keyword generated this, so we need to keep looking at something beyond our usual metrics that we track, beyond our usual activities that we perform when we advertise on Google Ads. And I'm just going to name this as campaign parameters. Right now, parameters are just variables that you can look at tracking when you start advertising on Google Ads. Not just Google Ads, anything else, but we will everything else. But at this point in time, we're only sticking to Google Ads. Now, let me tell you what I mean. Now, if you have a Google Ads account and you advertise people and you advertise to get people onto your website. So, this is my website and this is my Google Ads account, right? Now, when people come to my website, they may or may not engage in a sale. Now, let's assume that they have made a purchase and I've gotten a sale or a conversion, right? Now, this data now the activity between the activity that is the activity that got executed between a person navigating from Google Ads account to my website is very important. Now, in this process, a keyword was searched upon, an ad was clicked, or an ad extension was clicked, and then people went to my website. Once they have gone to my website, I need to look at what activity they did on my website, because what pages did they navigate? Did they only land on the checkout page, or did they go to any other pages and checkout? So I need to look at whatever has happened between these stages. Now, to do that, we would be talking about something called as campaign parameters. And what campaign parameters do is campaign parameters let you append something in addition to your URL. For example, if you're talking about this being your URL, now this is my URL. Now, what campaign URL parameters do is they append certain parameters called source. It can be name of the campaign, right? It can be the keyword, it can be whatever. So all these additional things that you're trying to append to your URL are called as campaign parameters. Now, these campaign parameters are responsible for passing the information from your Google Ads to the analytics that you would want to look at. Now, for that, it is very important that we need to link our Google Ads with something called as Google Analytics, which is another domain altogether, and we have a complete end-to-end module on Google Analytics. At this point in time, it is very important for us to understand what campaign parameters are, because we would be talking about analytics anyway as we move forward. Now, let me show you, or let me take you through a stage where these URL parameters are discussed, what kind of parameters are available, and how you can customize these things, and how you can track certain pieces of information and to stay abreast with what's happening with your Google Ads account, and how you can go ahead and start making these modifications. So without any delay, let me show you where you can find these. Now, while you can find these URLs and you can come up with creating these URLs or appending these parameters to your account, now you need to understand what these parameters are in general, right? You would anyways be getting now these URLs that you have after you append these UTM parameters are called as campaign URLs. Now, how do you work with campaign custom URLs is what we will be looking at. But before we jump into that, we need to look at what parameters are available in general. Now I could show this to you in a presentation. I could put these things in a slide and show you, but I really wanted to talk to you in a language that Google tries to explain you what these things are, because not just that, it will also tell you anything in addition that you may need to know. The next important thing that you and also another reason that I show it here is this should become a practice for you in case you want to refer something. Google Ads is huge, guys. Let's not beat around the bush. Google Ads is huge. So it's a very good practice for you to go ahead and start referring to the help center every now and then, because you would get new questions and you would encounter new situations. You will get confused at times. That's the way to go, and that's when you use me to clarify those questions or hurdles that you come across. Now, before we get into this, these are the parameters that we are talking about. Now, these parameters are what you need to understand before you even go ahead and create a custom URL. A custom campaign URL is no different from your regular URL. It's just that you will have additional parameters appended to your URL. It will not change your URL in any way except for the URL link. It will not change the contents of your URL. It will not change the design of your URL. It will only change the URL in such a way that there are certain additional parameters appended to your URL, as simple as that. Now, let's start looking at what these parameters are. Now, the parameters are that Google defines are UTM source, UTM medium, UTM campaign, UTM term, and UTM content. So let's look at what these things individually mean. UTM source basically means what is the source of this visit? Where is this guy coming from? Is he coming from a site, right? Or what advertiser? You can these are custom defined, which means you can define whatever you want for it to make easy for you. For example, if you have somebody coming from, let's say, a publication. Let's say you're coming. So what is sending this traffic to my website? Is it Google that's sending me, or is it another source? So whatever is your source, you will identify that here and you will put it down. As I said, this is not predefined. You can define anything that you want under this parameter. The second parameter is medium. Medium can be whether it's a PPC campaign or a banner campaign or a newsletter, whatever is defined. Whatever you want to define. Now, the name UTM campaign is nothing but the name of the campaign, because when you are running reports, when you analyze these URLs, you would want to understand what is the campaign that got the conversion for you, right? Because you can go ahead and capitalize more on that campaign. So you define your campaign name here. Now, this cannot be changed. It has to be the name of the campaign. For easy understanding, this has to be the exact name of the campaign that you have in your Google Ads account, right? UTM term is the keyword. Now, this lets you identify the exact search keywords that got you the visit or the conversion. If you're manually tagging paid keyword campaigns, you should also use UTM term to specify the keyword. Now, if you want to fetch the keyword that got you this conversion, you will go ahead and use this parameter. UTM content this is specifically used in A/B testing, where you're testing two different variations of the ad, and content fetches the ad content. For example, if you look at this, if you have two call to action links within the same email message, you can use UTM content and set different values so that you can understand which version is more effective, right? Let's say you have to, if you're sending out an email newsletter, guys, this is not only for Google Ads. You can use these custom URLs to track advertising on any platform. It can also be an email newsletter. Now, if you look at the definition, what this says is if you have two different call to actions on your email, in your emailer that you send, let's say buy now and get it now. If these are two different call to actions that I've included, fetching this UTM content will tell me which of these call to actions is performing better. So I can test which is performing better using these parameters. All right. Now each parameter must be paid with a value that you assign, which means you have to assign a value to these things. And your final campaign URL will look something like this. For example, okay, this is an example.com. UTM source is summer mailer, which means you're sending. When you look at this, you understand that this is a summer emailer that you have sent. UTM medium is an email because it's an emailer. The campaign that I've called this email campaign is summer sales. Now these are all not specifically defined values. These are values that you have assigned, right? Now when you add parameters to a URL, you should always use UTM source, UTM medium, and UTM campaign. You can't change the fields. You can't change the fields because those are predefined, but you can change whatever you put in them for your easy identification, right? Now this is very important. When you add the parameters, you should understand that UTM source and medium and the campaign, UTM term and content are optional. These are mandatory, right? UTM is usually a prefix for all these things. Now, how do you set up your custom campaigns is something that we will look at now. There are two ways to do that. Let me Now we need to understand how do you set up these URLs, right? Now there are two ways to do that. Either you can go here and click on this URL. Let me show you from scratch. You can simply go to Google and say, you can search for campaign URL builder, which will take you to the link in the analytics support. Now you will reach this stage. Okay. Website URL is, let's say this is my website URL. Campaign source, now this is a Google campaign. Medium, it's a PPC, not display, right? Campaign name is, let's say, books online. Campaign term and content are optional, but let's say identify that if you want to be this keyword to be identified, you can put in whatever you want. And let's say if you're talking about shoes in this particular URL, now let's say I'm talking about shoes here, right? And when you're done, the URL is automatically built and you just have to copy URL. Now, when you go ahead and create your Google campaign or any advertising campaign, you will have to put in your URL, right? The destination URL. You will not include this as your destination URL going forward. You will include this for it to fetch the details, right? Now, this URL can be used, and you can also you shorten this URL, but there is authorization that's needed. Right, so this is your new campaign URL, and let's open it here. You see how these things are Google, PPC, books online, and the UTM term is shoes, right? Now, when people click on your ad, come to this page, this information will be tracked and it will be displayed to you. Now, there are two more things we need to understand. Where do I find this data? After it's done, where do I find this data is number one that you need to understand. And what are the prerequisites for me to go ahead and use these campaign URLs? There are no prerequisites for you to use the campaign URLs. Anybody can go to campaign URL builder, which is this, and then start putting in these things. There is also another way to do that. Let me show what that is. It's called utm.io. You can go to this URL. And you can build your campaign URL. You just can sign up. You can try this out yourself, but it's pretty much the same thing, right? Let's sign up quickly. All right. So this is a third-party website. It is not authorized by Google. This is not a Google property. This is somebody else's property. So you can come here and very well generate your campaign URL. All right. So this is basically a Chrome extension. You can also download a Chrome extension, but to avoid that, let's simply say clicks now. Links. Let's click on links, create a link. Now, it's the same thing, right? So let's say Amazon, okay. Primary objectives, tracking, this thing, let's say nothing. V1 is computer projects. Yes. All right. Oh, come on. All right. So URL is www.amazon.in/shoes. That's my URL. Now template is, you can use any set templates if you have, but I don't want to use any templates at this point in time. So campaign is a Google campaign. Medium is PPC. Source is Google again. Term I can use, any if you want to generally generate dynamic keywords. For example, if you want your reports to show the keyword that people searched for exactly, you can simply put in, let's say, equal to, say, keyword, right? And if there are any nodes that you would want, shortener, I don't want to use any shortener. So this is my final URL that looks like. This is my final URL and this is what it looks like. Amazon.in/shoes, UTM campaign equal to Google, UTM medium equal to PPC, UTM source equal to Google, UTM term is equal to keyword. There's a double equal to, you can remove that. I don't want to use equal to because it's predefined. Right. Now if you look at it, Amazon.in/shoes, UTM campaign equal to Google, UTM medium is PPC, source is Google, UTM term equal to keyword. Now if I use this URL, if I copy this URL and use it as my destination URL going forward, somebody comes from, let's say, Google search campaign, searches for a keyword called shoes online. Now my reports will show me the keyword that the user actually searched for, that I can attribute to any particular conversion. Basically, the purpose of using this campaign URLs is to understand what is getting you results, which medium is getting you results, which campaign is getting you results, which keyword is getting you results, which ad is getting you results. Because if you know what is getting you results, you can obviously replicate that, add more budgets, and then scale that up so that you can generate as much as you can. So basically, this is how you work with campaign builders. First things first, you need to know what you want to track. Number two, you need to know how to build these URLs. You can build these URLs in two ways. One is go to google.com, type in campaign URL builder, it will give you the link. The second thing is use a third-party tool called utm.io, and this is how you do it, right? All right, so basically now we know where to go ahead and build these URLs. Now what we need to know is how do I go ahead and measure the data, right? To measure the data, there is something called as analytics that we would have to use. And as I said, there is a complete session on analytics, but let me tell you what happens and let me show you where you can find this data at this point in time. Linking analytics eventually will come in the later part of the session, and we have a detailed session, no need to worry. Now, to access the analytics tool, you just have to go to tools, click on Google Analytics. When you do that, it'll open up something like this. Now, this is my Google Analytics data, right? Now, if you start looking at this, I'm bothered about all the traffic that came in, right? What channels they came from, what source or medium that they came from. So using campaign URLs will start displaying my data under these things. And under, let's say, if you look at keywords, it will also show me the list of keywords that got the traffic, right? So all the data will be displayed here. And without campaign URLs, without using campaign URLs, Google data is automatically appearing in Google Analytics. It will happen. But if you're looking at other pieces of information, other A/B testing that you want to look at, other campaign level data that are attributed to conversions, all that might be missing. So to avoid that, it is suggested that you use campaign URLs, right? Thank you so much. And I hope this helps. If you have any questions, you know what to do. Now you can link your Google Ads and Analytics eventually when we reach that session. You don't have to worry about it now. But basically, it's always a good practice. And where do you add your URLs? Let's come here. Let's go to my campaign URLs. Now this is my URL, right? So copy the URL. Now I come to my ads section. When I'm creating the ads, there is the final URL that you see here. Now this is where you will put in your URLs, right? Use an HTTPS. All right. So this is where you use the URL. So Google will start tracking all this data in terms of what is the source, what is the medium, what is the campaign name, etc. when you run your reports and if you want to measure any particular aspect as you move forward. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, please write to me. I'll be more than happy to help you. Until next time, this is Casey signing off. Ciao.